Welcome to Opposition Territory here at the Philadelphia Sports Table Podcast Show, the longest-running weekly Philly sports podcast show in the world. That's right, over 12 years strong. And folks, this is our very first Eagles pregame show of the season, where we are previewing the upcoming Philadelphia Eagles versus Dallas Cowboys game to kick off the season this Thursday night football. It is going to be an extravaganza as the Philadelphia Eagles raise the Super Bowl champion banner at the Linc. I had to say that in front of our guest because I love him. I desperately love him and his jersey that he is wearing. Bless his soul. We have from bloggingtheboys.com, David Howman. Buddy, thanks for jumping on here. Thanks for being a good sport too. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. How you doing?
Yeah, I've been better. It's been a week for Cowboys fans and
yes,
for people who cover the team, and and it's been a year for the city of Dallas too. The Luka Doncic trade, now the Micah Parsons trade, everything in between.
Yeah.
So I am excited that football is back. The Cowboys also will play.
They'll play some semblance of football, right?
Yeah, they will be on the football field. Yes. They will be doing things, and yes. Jerry Jones will be speaking, unfortunately.
This is where us Eagles fans, those who are listening to this podcast too, are absolutely eating it up. And look, you're awesome to come on. Great sport to come on. We've had you on the show before. We've had great conversations, and we really want to get into what this matchup and what this game is going to look like, because it's a big one. It's a division game. Again, Eagles coming off the Super Bowl win, but the Dallas Cowboys, they have talent on the team. But yes, there is that vibe going into this season where this Dallas Cowboys team is going to struggle in certain areas. I mean, that is an ongoing narrative. And I kind of wanted to get into where some of this season is going to start. And I guess we have to first start and talk about Dak Prescott here, because he's coming off a season where yet another injury sidelined him. And he's certainly no spring chicken at this point, David, as we know, heading into his 10th year. In fact, he's only played one full season over the past 5 seasons. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it might have been 2021. He did play 16 games. I think he only missed 1 game that year where he was inactive. But look, he needs to get back into the swing of things for sure. And he actually said this past week that the Cowboys offense needs to be the aggressor against the Philadelphia Eagles this week on Thursday Night Football. What do you think that we are going to see from Dak Prescott this week, David? And is it realistically going to take him some time to kind of get that rust off? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, this has been an ongoing debate in Cowboys circles for a few years now, because really when Mike McCarthy showed up is when they really started getting into this routine of resting their starters during the preseason, especially Dak Prescott. Of course, his very first year, there was no preseason because it was the COVID year. And then 5 games in, Dak suffered what was the first of his several season-ending injuries that he had. And so then the first preseason we saw in the McCarthy era, he didn't take any preseason reps. And so then, he had a phenomenal 2021 season. 2022, he wasn't as good, and people started saying, he needs the preseason reps. But that was also the year where they traded away Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup was coming back from the ACL tear. Yep. There were a couple of other, I think Tyron Smith went down 2 days before the season opener.
Yeah.
Lots of different factors that led to a poor week 1 showing, and he ended up having a pretty good year. But it was touch and go for the first couple of weeks. How much of that is rust? How much of that was just the factors, dogging the offense overall? I personally, I don't fall into the rust belief side of things. But we've been here several seasons now where he hasn't played preseason. Most of the time he comes out looking pretty sharp. But this year, of course, we're seeing a new offensive play caller. Brian Schottenheimer's calling the plays, and it's kind of a weird system because he's a new head coach. Majority of his coaching staff is new. Brian Schottenheimer is a new play caller, and he says that they're tweaking a lot of things. But he also has been in Dallas for the last 3 years. He was there for the last year of Kellen Moore, and for the last 2 seasons when Mike McCarthy was calling plays. The first of which, Dak Prescott finished second in MVP voting. So he's seen highs, he's seen lows for Dak Prescott, but we don't really know what the offense is going to look like in terms of scheme, in terms of how much they're going to run versus pass. Mike McCarthy was very pass happy, just like he was in Green Bay back in the day. Brian Schottenheimer traditionally has been a run-heavy coach. He says he wants to establish the run, but we don't really have any answers at the running back after preseason.
Oh, we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, there's lots of questions there.
Yeah.
I don't have many answers just yet, but we're going to find out Thursday night. So I think that for this game, though, I think they're going to rely on Dak Prescott a lot just because there is a lot of uncertainty. But Brian Schottenheimer knows what Dak Prescott likes and doesn't like. He knows his relationship with CeeDee Lamb is like those two know each other super well. They know how to ball out. They also know that they have a guy named George Pickens who, if you lob it up to him 30, 40 yards down the field and you put it in the vicinity, he's probably coming down with it. So I think that we'll probably see this week 1 game is going to look a lot like Brian Schottenheimer calling up the things that Dak Prescott likes most just to do what's comfortable for him, and then kind of figuring out the rest of it as he goes along the way.
Yeah, and I think some of that comfort is also, and if my recollection is correct, watching the Dallas Cowboys the first couple weeks of the season with Dak Prescott, he really likes those intermediate routes. I mean, he loves when his receivers are running slant routes. If they're running some shorter curl type routes, those intermediate routes, Dak really likes. And it goes into the next topic I wanted to dive into here with you, David, which is the wide receivers and the tight ends, what their role is going to be. I mean, talk about Dak here. And with regard to the receivers here on this Cowboys team, I think he's just gonna need them to step up in a big way in Philadelphia to start this season here. I mean, the Cowboys receiving core is going to be going up against one of the youngest secondaries in the NFL. I mean, that is a reality, and I think that with CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, you mentioned as well, and even with their tight end Ferguson, I think could potentially be some problems with regard to a very young secondary. The cornerback 2 position for the Eagles isn't necessarily the strongest here. So how do you see the Cowboys wide receivers and tight ends really in terms of their role having that taking shape this coming week here?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I look at this game on the whole and all the different matchups, I think that's probably the easiest way for the Cowboys to have success because, like you mentioned, this defense has a very young secondary. Losing C.J. Gardner-Johnson
that's big.
That's a big problem.
Yep.
And I know the Eagles really like the guys that they have for 4 or 5 years now. We've been saying every April, like Howie Roseman does it again, like another great draft. So we're going to find out if those guys really are that great.
If Andrew Makuba is the real deal, yes.
Exactly. Yep. And And I've got my Arizona State flag up here. I watched Andrew Makuba and those Longhorns. It went into 2 overtime, so we did our best against that defense. But Andrew Makuba is talented. He seems like a really good fit for what Philly likes to do, but you never know with rookies. And Dak Prescott, throughout his career, I know we talked about like rust and will he be ready to go, but when he is, playing the way that he is capable of, he can really toast some rookies. He can toast some veterans too, especially with that connection with CeeDee Lamb. I think the Pickens addition opens things up vertically. That opens up more for CeeDee Lamb underneath. That opens things up for Jake Ferguson. Brian Schottenheimer also really wants to use Kevontae Turpin in this offense. Turpin has been their punt returner, their kick returner. I think he's been in the Pro Bowl each of the last 2 years now. He's been used some on offense, but not a whole lot. They're trying to use him more. They're playing him in the slot. They're using him as a kind of gadget player on like some of those jet sweeps, things like that. Even in some of the training camp practices, they've lined him up at running back, and they've used him as a ball carrier. I don't think that he's going to ever have more than 5 carries in a game. But on certain packages, they're going to get the ball in his hands and let him do what he does best. So I think that, before the Pickens trade, a lot of people were looking at the Cowboys and saying they don't have any weapons out of CeeDee Lamb. I think now the picture is becoming a little bit more clear. There's more options there. Pickens does a lot for opening this offense up because now we don't need to rely on Kevontae Turpin, making it as a wide receiver. You don't need to rely on Jalen Tolbert, who was quietly really good last year and has a strong chemistry with Dak Prescott, but you don't need to rely on him being a wide receiver 2. He can kind of split time with Turpin in that wide receiver 3 role that kind of cleans up after the defense takes attention away from all the other guys. So they have some really good weapons through the pass game, and I think that's why we will end up seeing a more pass-happy version of this offense than we may see later on down the road.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot on Dak Prescott's and these receivers' shoulders for sure, because we just really don't know what to expect from this Dallas Cowboys rushing attack on offense right out of the gate here. I mean, yes, Javonte Williams is there. Miles Sanders, who us Eagles fans know very well, Jaden Blue as well. They all seem to have an ability to potentially be that lead back at some point, maybe perhaps early this season. Who knows? I don't know. You're seeing much more of Cowboys camp than I am. David, what can we expect from the running back situation in Dallas right now, and what the rushing attack may actually look like against Philadelphia?
Yeah, first off, nobody knows anything at this point except for Brian Schottenheimer. So I'll lead with that.
Okay.
I will say, so they went into the start of training camp with Javonte Williams, who they signed in free agency, with Miles Sanders, who they signed in free agency. They drafted Jaden Blue, and they drafted Phil Maffa out of Clemson. They also had Deuce Vaughn still left over.
That's right.
And so we were looking at these are the 2 guys, and we were saying, these are the 4 guys, and there's 2 veterans, 2 rookies. A lot of people thought Deuce Vaughn wasn't going to make it, which he didn't. And it was kind of like, how do they want this thing to shake out? Javonte Williams didn't take a single preseason snap. So we're pretty sure Javonte Williams is going to be RB1 at the start of things. Miles Sanders, he played in 1 preseason game, did not look very good, got hurt, didn't play the second preseason game, but he made the roster. So it seems like they really like him. Jaden Blue looked very impressive in the preseason, but he also had an injury that kept him out most of training camp. He missed the first preseason game. So my best guess is Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders are the 2 main guys, Williams being more of that downhill kind of type, Sanders being more outside the tackles, helping out as a pass catcher, and they'll kind of bring Jaden Blue along. And as he starts to do more and more, he'll be more and more of that RB1 for the season. And they also really like Phil Maffa, who is starting the year on the injured reserve. He'll be able to return at some point. Whenever he does return, if Miles Sanders has not wowed us with regular season performance, he's probably the one who's most in danger.
Okay.
But for this game Thursday night, I think Javonte Williams probably gets the first carry. Miles Sanders will come in and spell him. They'll give Jaden Blue some work, like I mentioned. They'll give Kevontae Turpin some work at running back. They also really like their fullback, Hunter Lipke, who's a fullback, but he's also been a lead back in college at North Dakota State, has also lined up at tight end in the past for the Cowboys. He's going to be kind of a hybrid piece. They're going to use him all over. May even end up doing a trick play where he throws the ball at some point. Who knows? That might be fun. So they have a lot of options. My guess is they're going to try. They really like Javonte Williams. They're going to try and ride him. But we haven't seen him in a Cowboys uniform outside of training camp practice. So is it going to work? I don't know.
Anybody's guess.
I know they're very excited about Jaden Blue. They just don't want to put too much on him because he's a rookie and he missed some time early. But long term, when we get to the end of the season, he should be the guy that they're most excited about from this room.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens with this Dallas Cowboys offense for sure, especially with the quote rushing attack, I'll say, at this point. So look, folks, you got to follow David and what he and his colleagues are doing over at bloggingtheboys.com. Great site. If you want to get into it with some Dallas Cowboys fans out there, they got great content, great guys over there as well. And David, I know you're over on the Twitter /X @_DH44_. Where else can folks find you on the interwebs out there if they want to check you out?
Yeah. You can find me on Blue Sky @DH44. I was able to get in there without the underscores.
There you go.
And yeah, I mean, I write at Blogging the Boys. I also cover Arizona State. Go Devils with Devils in Detail. So also heartbroken about Cam Scatterbo being a New York Giant. That is a tough one to swallow.
Dude, it's the worst. I mean, I've told you how many times, I mean, being a Penn State fan here, how many times, whether it's Micah Parsons, Sean Lee, how many Penn State guys have been going to the Cowboys? It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, Saquon Barkley for a while was a Giant too. So
it was awful.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I do have Scatterbo in 2 of my fantasy teams. So at the very least, I get the profit off of it.
There you go. Folks, if you are new to watching us here on YouTube, like and subscribe. We would appreciate that. Hit that like button, subscribe. You can also hit the bell to be notified when we post new videos. And we are also on the socials as well. You can search us out on Instagram. We're over on X, Twitter/X, I should say. I'm over on TikTok at Mr. Jeff Warren. Like our Facebook page, we're on Threads. Eric and I are over on Blue Sky as well. We are going to be taking a break to pay some bills. We are going to be back in just a bit with more of our pregame preview show, Dallas Cowboys against Philadelphia Eagles. Stick with us. All right, we are back with our good friend David Howman from bloggingtheboys.com. We were talking about the offense before break, David. Let's now get into the defense here because, of course, losing Michael Parkins was huge, one of the best defenders in the NFL. And look, I was reading some articles this past week. I know that ESPN has predicted the Cowboys defense to potentially allow the most points this coming season. They put it at 439 points. I was like, holy crap, unreal. Is this Cowboys defense going to end up being, in your opinion, the shakiest in the league? And how are they going to match up against this Eagles high-powered offense this week?
Yeah, anytime you lose a guy like Micah Parsons, it's not going to improve your odds. So
sorry, it's like you had to say it, even though it's like the obvious. That I love it.
Yeah,
yes.
They didn't get better defensively.
Right.
All due respect to Kenny Clark. Kenny Clark is a great player. He does do a lot for what was their biggest weakness, which was the run defense.
Right.
Does that make up for what you're losing? Not quite. So yeah, the defense will not be as good as it has been in the past with Micah Parsons. Although granted, last year they were not very good either. And he played for most of that game. I know most of that season he missed a couple of games here and there, but I think the idea that they're going to be the worst defense, at least by scoring, I would probably be a little bit surprised if it was that bad.
That's what I was thinking too, honestly. That's what I honestly.
Top 10 unit necessarily, but
right.
I mean, they have a new defensive coordinator in Matt Eberflus, and I know that he's not his head coaching tenure was not great in Chicago.
Right.
But the man is definitely a defensive savant. I mean, he was also calling the plays for those Bears defenses. The defense was not the problem with those Bears teams. The defense with the Colts when he was there was also really good. So he's a guy who knows how to build a good defense. He has he's very confident in his scheme and what he's trying to do there. That defense is also very much built around pass rush by way of the 3-technique defensive tackle. They have a guy named Osa Odigizua who really is like tailor-made for this kind of defense. I think he's going to have a breakout year. He's been really good the last few years, but I think he's going to have the best year of his career playing in this defense. And it's also predicated on the secondary being able to force takeaways. That's been one of the things that the Cowboys have been consistently great at for the last 4 or 5 years.
They have.
Trayvon Diggs gets interceptions all the time. Deron Bland gets interceptions all the time. They traded for Kaiir Elam, who's a former first-round pick for the Bills. Never really quite found his footing in Buffalo, but he's been easily their most impressive defensive back throughout this offseason, even ahead of guys like Bland, who just signed a contract extension with them. So I think like I said, I don't think that they're going to be a top 10 defense, but there's definitely potential there. Matt Eberflus has the track record as a defensive coach. They should be able to make plays. They should be able to play good enough defense that if Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens are doing their thing, they can win probably more games than they'll lose and at least be in the playoff hunt, if not making the playoffs outright.
All right. Well, that is certainly a great take right there from you. I love that take. But like in terms of like looking at this
And they're going to
week,
sweep the Eagles, of course.
yeah. Oh, of course. Absolutely. Of course. This weak Eagles team. Yes. but look, I mean, one of the most important aspects of playing football in general, and it's always interesting to watch with these two teams when they go up against each other twice a year, how important the trenches are. Again, both sides of the ball. It's critical, and it's critical in terms of winning games in the NFL. So I guess that brings us to, what we might see from the Cowboys defensive line here, because I'm wondering, in your opinion, David, how does the Dallas pass rush really match up against this Eagles offensive line, which is one of the best in the league? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, like you said, Eagles offensive line is elite. Jeff Stoutland the work he's done as their offensive line coach. It's funny that like the core piece of this Eagles dynasty is one of the few holdovers from the Chip Kelly era.
Yes. Yep.
I just love that detail. But
yep.
Their offensive line is great. It figures to continue to be great. And just the way that this offense works, with so much of it built around the run game, so much of their pass game being built off RPOs and play action. I think that's probably going to increase even more with Kevin Patullo as the offensive coordinator, given his own backgrounds. That on its own just makes it hard for a pass rush to win, because you don't have time to rush the passer most of the time. And I think that's kind of, when you look at Jalen Hurts last year, that was his biggest issue, was he does hold the ball a little too long on occasion.
Yep.
And, so if they can get him, get more quick game schemed up there, it's probably going to be game over for the defense, because there's already that issue of the pass rush, and you lose a guy like Micah Parsons. Matt Eberflus did make a good point, though, heading into preparation for this week, is he said, well, Micah hasn't practiced with us as long as I've been here, because he was holding out and also had this back issue. So he's like, it's really no difference for me. Like, I haven't done anything with Micah, and now I'm not doing anything with Micah. So they have a second-round rookie in Donovan Ezeraku, who they really, really like. He's flashed a lot in preseason. They have Sam Williams, who is coming off an ACL tear, but they really like. Marshawn Nealon was a rookie last year. They brought back Dante Fowler, who led the Commanders in sacks last year. Was with the Cowboys the years before that. And then they also added James Houston a few days after training camp began. James Houston was a draft pick. I want to say he was out of Jackson State by the Lions. He was like a 6th or 7th round pick, and he had become like a pass rushing savant for them. He had, I think, there was one game where he had 2 sacks on 9 snaps played in one game for them. And then injuries kind of derailed his career. They ended up, he was a preseason cut. They brought him in, and he made the roster because all he did in preseason was make play after play after play. And so that's another guy that I think they might be able to use him as kind of a situational pass rushing type alongside all these other guys. They're gonna have a deep rotation along the edges. And like I said, Osa Odighizuwa is going to be really the engine of the defense, especially there in the middle. They build so much of it around trying to attack up the middle. And especially going into this game with Landon Dickerson and his injury. And I know I don't know if it's been declared one way or another if he will play, but even if he does play, what percentage is he playing at against a guy like Osa Odighizuwa? That's a potential for some pass rush wins there.
Absolutely. And Nick Sirianni was asked just today about Landon Dickerson's potential back injury. Didn't want to comment on it. So there's definitely something with that for sure. So, buddy, before we let you go, on our opposition territory shows, and specifically our pregame shows, over the years that we have been doing this, we want to get into what both teams are going to need to hit on for a win this week. So let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. What do you think is the one thing the Cowboys are going to need to hit on for a win this week against this Philadelphia Eagles team?
I think it's going to seem like low-hanging fruit, but it's going to start with the offense needing to move the chains consistently and stay on schedule. When I think about Vic Fangio, and the Cowboys have had a lot of run-ins with Vic Fangio in the last few years with different teams. Dak Prescott didn't get to play against Fangio last year due to the injury, but Vic has had his number in several games with the Dolphins, with the Broncos, and the most consistent thing there has just been that they get behind the chains, and then we get into the 3rd and long, and Dak's an aggressive guy, like you said. He wants to be the aggressor. He always wants to be the aggressor. When he gets into those 3rd and longs, that's where his mind kind of goes like, I'm either throwing the first down or I'm throwing a pick, but I'm taking a chance, and that's exactly what Vic Fangio wants you to do. Yep. So in going up against a defense like this, even though they have like we said, the youngest secondary, they lost several pass rushers as well, which that'll be interesting to see how those things change with that dynamic on that defense. But if Dak can play ahead of the chains and he can play on schedule and he doesn't get put in those gotta have it situations, that will be tailoring into his game. And I think with the weapons that they have, they should be able to do that. But it's just against a guy like Vic Fangio, it's hard to have those answers. He has built a really, really successful career out of not giving quarterbacks those answers. Yeah. Most recently against a guy named Patrick Mahomes. Maybe you've heard of him. He's pretty good. And he couldn't do much of anything against Vic Fangio. So
very true.
Easier said than done, but that's the key for me for the Cowboys.
All right. Well, on the flip side of that coin, David, to close us out here, what are the Eagles going to need to hit on for a win against the Cowboys?
I think it's going to really be focusing on Jalen Hurts and taking care of the ball. And I think that's in a nutshell, I think that's what he does best when he's at his best. He not necessarily is going to be the guy that always throws for 400 yards, 5 touchdowns, but he lives to play another down. And the Eagles also know that they have 4 downs because of the tush push. Like,
yes,
you don't necessarily need to do it in 3 downs. But then there are those games where he tries to be that guy. He tries to do too much, and it'll get him in trouble. And I think he's definitely a good passer, but there are times where there's certain throws he can't make, and other DBs will be able to take advantage of those mistakes. Against a Matt Eberflus defense, they're very much designed to take advantage of those kind of mistakes. So if they can force him into those situations of him trying to make something happen, kind of similar with what I said about Dak Prescott, if the quarterback is trying to make something happen when it's not there, that's when Matt Eberflus thrives. That's when his scheme thrives. But with the Eagles, they have such a good running game most of the time, and they should with the offensive line and Saquon Barkley. Usually he's not going to be put in those situations, but that's what the Cowboys have to do, is put him in those situations and force him to try and create when there's nothing there.
Yep. Well, folks, the NFL season is just about here. This game kicking off Thursday is going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with both of these teams, Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles, throughout the 2025-2026 season. Again, our friend David Howman from bloggingtheboys.com @_DH44_ over on Twitter/X. Give him a follow. He's a fantastic, fantastic guy. Buddy, thanks so much. I appreciate you taking the time to come on our pregame podcast show here and come back and join us down the road. I'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, always have a fun time coming on here. 17-0 for the Cowboys starts right here. So let's go.
Let's do. All right. Well, let's not do it, actually. All right. We'll end the show there, folks, and we'll see you later.